There is a place on Earth deeper than Mount Everest is tall. If you drop the world's tallest mountain into it, the peak would still sit more than a mile beneath the surface. No sunlight has ever touched the bottom. No storm has ever reached it. And if you fell into it, your body would begin to change in ways most people cannot imagine. Most people assume drowning is what would kill you. It is not. The danger is what the water itself does to you, long before your lungs ever run out of air. You have probably heard the name before. The Mariana Trench, a crescent-shaped scar in the floor of the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Philippines, at its deepest point, called Challenger Deep. The seafloor rests roughly 10,935 meters below the surface. That is close to 11 kilometers of water pressing down from above. And every 10 meters you descend, the pressure on your body increases by roughly 1 atmosphere. By the time you reach the bottom, more than 1,000 atmospheres are pushing on every square inch of you. To picture that, imagine 50 commercial airliners stacked on top of a single human being. That is close to the force. Now hold that image, because here is what most people get wrong about deep water. You would not be crushed the moment you fell in. The reason is strange. Water is nearly incompressible. Unlike air, it does not squeeze down into a smaller volume when you press it. So it does not slam into your body the way a falling weight would. It surrounds you. It presses evenly, from every direction, on every surface. And that even pressure is what makes the deep ocean so quietly, patiently lethal. The first thing to fail would not be your bones. It would be the air inside you. Your body is not a solid block. It is a system of hollow spaces. Your lungs, your sinuses, your inner ears, your stomach. Each one contains gas. And gas, unlike water, is highly compressible. At just 10 meters down, the air in your lungs is already half its normal volume. At 20 meters, it is a third. By the time you pass 100 meters, the small pockets of gas inside your skull are being squeezed so violently that the delicate tissues around them tear apart. Your eardrums rupture first. Then the small blood vessels in your sinuses. Then, if you are still conscious, your lungs begin to collapse inward. But this is only the beginning of the descent. In 1875, a British research ship called HMS Challenger was mapping the deep Pacific when its crew dropped a weighted line into the sea and could not find the bottom. They kept letting out rope. 8,000 meters, 9,000. When the line finally struck something solid, they had discovered the deepest place on the planet. They named it after the ship. Nearly a century later, in 1960, a Swiss oceanographer named Jacques Piccard and a United States Navy officer named Don Walsh climbed into a small steel sphere called the Trieste and did something no one had ever done. They rode it all the way down to the bottom of Challenger Deep. The descent took almost 5 hours. When they arrived, they had less than 20 minutes to look around. The window of their submersible had cracked from the pressure. They saw pale sediment. Something moved. They came back up. For 52 years after that, no human returned. Then, in 2012, the filmmaker James Cameron built a submersible he called the Deep Sea Challenger and made the descent alone. He described the bottom as an otherworldly, alien plane, silent in a way the surface world never is. Since then, only a handful of people have followed. In 2019, an explorer named Victor Vescovo made a series of dives even deeper than Cameron's. And each time he descended, he pulled up creatures no one had ever seen. This is where the story becomes stranger, because things live down there. Not just microbes, not just abstract single cells, real animals, fish with translucent skin, shrimp-like crustaceans called amphipods, some of them the size of your hand, sea cucumbers gliding across the sediment, and a small, ghostly fish called the Mariana snailfish. formerly named Pseudolaparis swirei, discovered by the deep-sea biologist Alan Jameson and his colleagues at depths beyond 8,000 meters. How can any animal survive in a place that would crush a human being like a soda can under a truck? The answer is chemistry. At those depths, ordinary proteins in a body do not fold correctly. Pressure warps them. It kinks them into useless shapes. For most life on Earth, this is a death sentence. But the fish that live in the trench carry a molecule inside their cells called trimethylamine N-oxide, often shortened to TMAO. It is a simple compound. It acts like a chemical scaffold. It holds the proteins in their proper shape when pressure tries to crush them. The deeper a fish lives, researchers have found, the more TMAO it carries. It is the invisible armor of the deep. But there is a limit, around 8,500 meters. The concentration of TMAO required to keep the protein stable would begin to interfere with the fish's own biology. The cells would become too salty, too rigid. Life, at some point, hits a ceiling not because of predators, or hunger, or oxygen, but because chemistry itself refuses to bend any further. So the deepest fish on Earth are not living where they want to. They are living exactly as deep as physics will allow. Now think about your own body. You have no TMAO in useful amounts. You have no reinforced cells. Your proteins would begin to fold incorrectly at depths a fraction of the way to the bottom. Your enzymes would slow. Your nervous system would begin sending confused signals. Long before you were ever near the trench floor, your biology would already be unraveling. And yet, even this is not the strangest part. Because if you kept falling and somehow reached the bottom, you would not find rock. You would land in soft, pale, powderous sediment, sometimes several hundred meters thick. It has been settling there, particle by particle, for millions of years, fine dust from ancient volcanic eruptions. Skeletons of microscopic plankton drifted down from the surface. The bodies of whales that died and sank across an entire epoch, living inside that sediment. Scientists have found single-celled organisms called xenophyophores. Some of them grow to the size of a dinner plate. A single cell, the size of a plate. They have no brain, no nervous system, and they have been quietly filtering the sediment of the trench for longer than complex life has existed on land. The deep-sea researchers, Ronnie Glood and his team, have shown that even at the very bottom of Challenger Deep, microbial life is unexpectedly active. The trench is not a dead zone. It is a hidden engine of the planet. Falling organic matter piles up there, and microbes eat it, converting it back into the chemistry that fuels the rest of the ocean. You are standing in this hypothetical, on top of one of the most quietly alive places on Earth. But you would not be standing for long. Because your body is not built for this world. It is built for a thin, warm layer near the surface. 99% of the ocean, by volume, is uninhabitable to a human being without engineering. The pressure alone excludes you. The cold, hovering just above freezing, excludes you further. The absence of sunlight would strip away every visual cue your brain has evolved to use. You would not know which way was up. Sound would travel strangely. The sediment would rise around your feet like slow-motion smoke. And then there is the silence. Below about 1,000 meters, the ocean grows quieter than almost anywhere else on Earth. There is no wind, no waves, no boats. The only sounds are the faint clicks and calls of deep-sea creatures. And sometimes, the distant echo of a whale singing hundreds of kilometers away. Carried by the layered temperature of the water, most of what you would hear in your final moments would not be threatening. It would simply be old. The water at the bottom of the Mariana Trench has not touched the surface in more than 1,000 years. It arrived through slow, patient currents that began in the Arctic and the Antarctic, sank because of their density. and drifted along the seafloor for centuries before finding their way into the trench. The water pressing against you would be older than most human civilizations. Here is what all of this reveals. The planet you live on is not really your planet. Not most of it. You occupy a thin skin of light and warmth near the surface. And beneath you, a vast and ancient world continues on its own terms. Entirely indifferent to whether you exist. The trench does not care that you are curious about it. The snailfish did not evolve for your benefit. The pressure at the bottom did not need to be discovered to be real. For a species that so often believes it has mapped, tamed, and understood its home, the Mariana Trench is a quiet correction. 95% of the ocean is still unexplored in any meaningful sense. Deeper maps exist for the surface of Mars than for the floor of your own planet sea. You cannot fall into the Mariana Trench and survive. But something more interesting is true. You already live above it. Right now, whatever you are doing as you watch this, the trench is there. The snailfish is drifting through darkness. The sediment is settling, particle by particle, as it has for millions of years. The ancient water is pressing against the seafloor with the weight of 50 jumbo jets. And none of it needs you to see it in order to keep going. Most people assume the deepest place on Earth is a distant, abstract idea. It is not. It is directly beneath a portion of the sky you can point to on a map. It is one long, slow fall away. And in a strange way, it makes the ordinary world above it feel almost impossible. A thin, warm, luminous strip where your body happens to work, where your lungs hold their shape, where sound behaves the way you expect, where light reaches your eyes without needing to travel through 1,000 years of darkness first. You do not think about the trench very often, but it is thinking, in its own quiet way, about nothing at all. And that, perhaps, is the strangest thing of all. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing for more. I will see you in the next one.